Greetings, dreamers. Changes often occur without us even realizing it. One day we just wake up and things are different. Sometimes it happens gradually, right under our noses. Other times it happens all of a sudden, whether we're prepared for it or not. How we cope with the inevitability of drastic change is a constant test of character throughout all of our lives. When we look back at the trials we've endured and the trails we've blazed, to consider all of the unexpected possibilities, it brings into question the notions of choice, predestination, and ultimately the concept of fate. We cannot outrun the consequences of our decisions. They always catch up to us, eventually. We may try to hide from them, but they will find us. And when they do, we will have no choice but to deal with them. However, we don't have to face them alone. That's what friends are for. Friends share in our experiences. They quest alongside us, caring for us. We help one another with our problems, defend each other against harm, and offer our time and patience in exchange for love and understanding. In the end, when we leave this reality behind, it is through our friends that our memories will live on. Let's turn the page. Chapter 8. Violet, Rain, and Deepest Wisdom. Reflections of fragile time in memoriam trickle over her like a brisk and bitter rain. She is awash in a deepening sense of hopelessness and fear. Tears are streaming from her eyes. She is no longer able to feel or to see her own body. There is only an ephemeral blur of silver amidst overlapping scales and shallow breathing gills. Velvet antlers sprout startlingly from her temples, and frosty clouds trail from each curved prong. When she finally emerges on the other side, she isn't clad a human anymore. She leaps gracefully onto a snowy hillside and bounds off directly towards the setting sun with an instinctual purpose. The sky is blushed orange and softening as the morning star sinks down between distant, snow-capped mountains. The forested landscape is covered in a thick blanket of snow and ice. There are clusters of hemlock trees here and there, with a wide frozen river winding its way between them, towards the alpine horizon. She is not thinking, only reacting to her urgent feelings. She springs straight for the frozen river, leaving behind hoofprints. She sniffs at the air and recognizes the danger that follows. Behind her, a cloud of black birds rises up from amid the frosted hemlocks. Their wings are silently cleaving the air as they swoop into the shapes of two glowing green eyes. The eyes squint and release crooked branches of lightning that merge into a single bright bolt, striking the crest of the snowy hill. The two-eyed storm of birds disappears in a feathery gale, and a new, horrific version of her enemy comes calling. She can hear them panting and snarling as they pursue her. She can feel their rapacious claws breaking the crisp surface of the snow. In a moment, a pack of abominable black wolves comes dashing over the ridge to run her down. The chase is renewed from the sea, predator pursuing its prey. The dark light feels stronger this time than before. Her shadow has recuperated from their battle in the Canyon of Clouds, and is invigorated by her fear, hunting her with a fresh and dreadful zeal. She runs for her life, and does not look back. A frigid wind whistles past her through the tall pines. She leaves small puffs of frozen breath in her wake as she desperately dashes forward. She hears a creaking sound from beyond some of the trees, and notices there is a seemingly abandoned windmill there, standing like a silent sentry in the deep snow. Its worn-out sails are torn and tattered, covered in icicles that refract the fading sunlight. A little yellow bird flies out from behind one of the ragged sails and darts off ahead of her. She can hear the wolves gaining speed. They are stalking her with a ravenous hunger. The chilling thought of their fearsome fangs biting into her hindquarters spurs her on faster. She is nearing the edge of the frozen river. She prances recklessly onto the slippery surface and begins sliding across the glaze. She gets a good look at her reflection when she does this. She has taken on the elegant form of an auburn cervid, becoming the great deer mother. She wears antlers to caress the newborn sun on the eve of the winter solstice. Perhaps she willed this hind and heart therianthropic shift into happening. She's sure this is the first time she has looked upon her reflection without immediately disastrous results. The dire wolves are closing in on her. The yellow bird suddenly appears again directly ahead of her. It is flapping and fluttering, making quite the commotion. This startling distraction from her careful footing causes her to slip, and all four of her nimble hooves give out from under her. Her belly meets with the frozen surface of the river, and the twittering little bird hops about in her crown of sacred antlers, then lands for a moment on her back, between her broad, hairy shoulders. She fights hard to regain her footing, but cannot convince her spindly, cervine legs to work together. As swiftly as it arrived, the clamoring yellow bird flies away into the hemlocks, and for some reason, she feels just a bit lighter. Then she hears a guttural snarl from the edge of the frozen water. She looks behind to see that the wolves are nearly upon her. All of their evil eyes are glowing green, and their jaws are dripping with saliva, anticipating that first delicious bite of her flesh. One by one, they begin creeping across the ice towards her. Just as the superior of the pack is about to lunge, a large shadow leaps over her from behind, lands between them, and growls low, daring any of the wolves to make a move. She is delighted to see her old vulpine friend's bushy tail swaying back and forth in front of her muzzle. Penumbra has come to her rescue. The wolves take turns trying to maul the jumbo bat-eared fox, slashing with claws and snapping with jaws, but they are each knocked back in turn by a swift pair of powerful paws. The wolves are fiercely persistent, though, and they do eventually manage to wear down and wound Penumbra several times, rending bloody gashes into the fox's ruddy fur. Penumbra's blood stains the pure cerulean snow. Amid the fray, she finds the opportunity to crawl away from the skirmish to the opposite side of the frozen river, where she finds Penumbra's footprints leading out of the hemlock forest and up to the ice's edge. There, in a small pile on the snowy embankment, are Speartooth, her quiver, and her seahorse cornet, all frozen stiff. She rubs her nose against Speartooth's scaly belly and taps at the seahorse with one of her cloven hooves. It is then that her animal form melts away, and she resumes her human appearance, crown and all. Her attire has changed again, this time being uniquely suited to the wintry environment. She tries to knock some of the ice off of Speartooth and warms the bow up to be used. The irony of having once been the hunter when pursuing the silver cervid among the clouds, and now being the hunted, is not lost on her. The mouse warned her that they would be coming, many of them, to test her power and resolve. This will be the beginning of her retreat into shadow, for the solstice is just around the corner. It is then that the dark light will be at its most powerful. Running away never feels like the right response to adversity. She has always been taught to stand her ground. Now she must lie low. But how does one hide in the shadows, when it is the shadow one is running from? Penumbra lets out a whimper, and then a strained growl. One of the wolves has cut rather deeply.
Penumbra!
She pulls an arrow from her brilliant emerald quiver. Despite the biting cold, she finds that the quill she chooses feels warm to the touch. She draws it back into Speartooth's groove, and the two-headed snake awakens from a brief seasonal hibernation.
You left us again,
they speak in unison.
Luckily your fox chum found us beside the opening of the gateway that brought us here, after you decided to change into a deer and run away. Yes, it was very good of Penumbra to dig us up and carry us back to you, else we might have been buried in this winter forever. We are starting to think that you are rather reckless.
She smirks at this and cocks an irked eyebrow. She hears the seahorse thawing out, tooting and shivering in the snow beside her. She raises Speartooth and takes aim. She releases her arrow, and it zips past one predator's snout, landing in the ice, directly in the middle of the pack.
Well now, I thought these arrows never missed.
The fatter head of Speartooth remarks.
Perhaps the cold is affecting their accuracy,
Infers the thinner head.
No,
She proclaims.
I was aiming for the ice.
The surface of the frozen water begins to crack and split. Penumbra turns around and hurriedly limps towards She, making it to the riverbank just in time. The ice breaks apart, leaving some of the grim wolves stranded on separate floating chunks, and others plunging into the frosty drink. The river moves slowly at first, but the power of the arrow from the laughing tree soon melts away the wintry crust and awakens the river's rapid flow, washing the wolves downstream. They howl in defeat as they float off into the distance. She rushes to brave Penumbra's side, inspecting her friend's many wounds.
Oh dear, this is not good.
I knew it was you, despite having the semblance of a holy deer,
Penumbra says.
I have been waiting here for you.
The injured fox struggles to breathe and lies there for a moment, panting laboriously.
I felt so guilty for leaving you behind. I've been very worried about you.
Are you going to die?
She asks her faithful friend, wincing and choking back a silver teardrop.
It would not be the first time.
Penumbra responds, coughing up a splotch of blood.
Remember, after we first met, you laid to rest that possessed monster with one of your arrows. And then, as the dark light began to incarnate out of the beast's lifeless husk, you were dragged off into the sky by a bird.
Penumbra struggles to her feet and begins limping towards a winding line of hemlocks. She retrieves her shivering seahorse from the snow and walks beside Penumbra, keeping one comforting hand upon her injured companion as they go.
It was by way of my first death that the brazen bull resurrected. Your shadow offered me to the bull's effigy in order to raise it from its slumber. The bull is a consequence, a force of nature that must go dormant for a time after it has been sent on a rampage. It can only be awakened if a creature of great spirit is sacrificed before one of its altars.
She is reminded of the bull's statue she encountered on the island. The memory sends a chill up her spine. If only she'd known then what she knows now. The two of them trudge for a good long while across the brumal breadth, remaining taut and alert to their surroundings.
You see,
Penumbra forewarns.
the winter solstice is nearly upon us. Your shadow will be hunting for you, sending all of its minions to find you and to hold you down so it can claim you. They will blitz you like an endless army, a flood of hungry mouths Each wave of the dark light's power will augment until the shadow is so immense that it swallows everything. We must find a safe place where you can hide until the spring thaw.
Penumbra's voice is becoming faint.
I don't want to hide. I want to face the shadow. I want to stop running, though I feel compelled to.
She notices a certain lightness. Something has departed that's been burdening her. Before she can put her finger on what it is, they amble through a barrier of pine trees to find a most impressive sight awaiting them. There, shimmering under the last rays of the setting sun, is a castle made of ice. Like a prism, it refracts translucent rainbows across the gelid terrain. It is welcoming them inside in spectacular fashion.
When I awoke in this place, I had no idea where I was or how I got here.
Penumbra says,
If the satyr Marcius had not found me, I might have frozen to death. He brought me here to his castle, warmed me by his fire, and played his music, helping me to clear my mind of the haze imposed upon it by the one called Hellbender.
Who is Hellbender?
she asks as they approach the enormous icy door. Penumbra reaches up with an unsteady paw and grasps one of the door handles. She helps Penumbra pull down, and the door opens just a crack for them to enter. She feels Speartooth squirming.
The reptilian who joined us in the Canyon of Clouds.
Penumbra says,
He was once part of a thieves' alliance known as the Rogues' Gallery. He, like most of the denizens of Zorn, has the ability to manipulate the minds of others unless they are shielded from his brainwaves by certain types of alchemically imbued metal or cloth. I was not aware of his meddling in my mind until Marcius helped me to reach backward into my hidden thoughts. Hellbender was the one who planted the notion in my brain that we should retreat to the city of Uhai. He no doubt suggested I fly to this place as well. I only stopped because I was physically exhausted and crashed into a tree.
She feels eyes on her back and turns around, pushing the icy door shut behind them. Penumbra recognizes her distress.
Did he follow you here? Was it he who helped you to escape from Uhai?
The gazing chamber.
She says,
I fell into a secret place, and he followed. He was with me when I stepped through the portal that brought me here.
Her eyes dart around the room, searching for the slightest hint of movement that could reveal the presence of an invisible creature. Then the obvious occurs to her. She pulls Speartooth over her shoulder and demands to know the truth.
What do you know about this Hellbender?
She tightens her grip around the Duophidians' shared belly and gives them a firm shake.
As a former resident of Zorn, I suspect you have knowledge of what Penumbra has said, but won't divulge that information, as it is in your admitted nature not to do so.
They go limp as a wet noodle in her hand, surrendering to her percipient interrogation.
I told you that we should tell her.
The fatter head hisses.
Oh, shut your trap, else I'll tie us in a knot that we'll both regret.
The thinner head retorts. She starts to detect that her initial impression of the gaunt side, being the more submissive and well-mannered of the two, may have been wrong. Then again, perhaps being joined as a dyad means sharing traits. The fatter head ignores its counterpart's idle threat and reveals to her all that she wants to know. and more.
Forgive us for not telling you, but Hellbender insisted it was of vital importance that you not know. Using telepathy, he told us that he is on a secret mission, and that nothing shall jeopardize his chances of completing it.
The thinner head groans in disgust and flops over as an expression of disapproval.
Hellbender is something of a subversive legend among the Zorn. A gifted metallurgist, shapeshifter, and the deadliest of assassins. Hellbender was once the Emperor's chief spy. However, he became a turncoat when his twin brother, a respected sage who decrypted an ancient Zorn prophecy that was written in arcane fire tongue, was executed for treason. Frith Marak ordered this, judging it to be a necessary sacrifice for preserving their austere civilization. Hellbender knew it was a lie, and he swore vengeance, sparking an uprising that was swiftly quelled. All dissidents who joined in the revolt were killed. Hellbender managed to evade the Emperor's grasp. He became a ghost. Ever since, he has been finding ways to undermine Frith Marak, including helping to orchestrate the emancipation of the facets of Uhay.
The thinner head peers back and scowls.
My dear sister omitted Hellbender's part in our story. You see, he discovered our sequestered lair and secretly befriended us. It was he who directed us through the dungeons, introduced us to Tumbles, and showed the apes how to reinforce their helmets with an alloy that would block out the mind control powers which the Zorn had used to enslave them. Hellbender is a rebellious hero. He knows what the Fire Tongue prophecy his late brother decoded foretold. He shared the cipher with Tumbles in case he failed, and he continues his mission even now to make certain that the prophecy comes to fruition. After the Facets escaped from Zorn, Hellbender traveled in disguise. He soon joined the Rogues Gallery, of which Tumbles, more a grave robber than the digger he claims to be, was a prominent member. Together, they tried to convince the Guild of Thieves to help them overthrow Frith Marak. The satyr, Marcius, who was head of the Alliance at that time, opposed Hellbender's request. He cited a lack of honor among thieves that would make a coordinated offensive nearly impossible. Many crude insults were hurled between Hellbender and Marcius. It nearly came to blows. This caused a schism in the Rogues Gallery, and the guild was disbanded soon after. Hellbender quested for death, and ultimately found it at the hands of the Darklight. He sacrificed himself in order to find you. It's all been part of the plan. His purpose is good, I'm certain of it. We just don't speak about him. Not out of fear from the Emperor's reprisal, but out of respect for Hellbender's heroism. I am breaking an oath by telling you all of this, but I want you to try to understand and to trust that Hellbender is following us for a good reason.
The thinner head flickers a taunting tongue, now that Fathead has finished spilling their guts. She pauses to consider what she has just been told.
Honesty goes a long way with me.
She says,
But it's hard to not be suspicious of his motives with all this sneaking around.
Understandable.
Speartooth remarks together.
If he is still with us, he will not survive long here.
Penumbra coughs.
The Zorn are cold-blooded, so much so that they live in the cavernous foothills of a volcanic crater.
The trail of bloody paw prints the great fox is leaving behind changes her mood from sharp wariness to somber concern. It is at this moment the most resplendent music she has ever heard wafts through the resonant castle's open spaces. She recognizes the song's root, for there had been a very similar melody echoing throughout the gazing chamber.
That song. It's so beautiful. It makes my heart ache.
She says.
It is the ballad of Marsyas and his syrinx.
Penumbra tells her.
With this song, he alters reality and brings peace to the restless.
Penumbra limps through the palace, and she follows, listening intently. She feels as though her ears might fly away from her head, like a kaleidoscope of butterflies on a joyful breeze. She notices now the crystalline ice walls have taken on the appearance of blue stone, and there are many tapestries hanging from the lofty ceiling. Each one tells a colorful story. The music seems to bring the images to life as she passes by. They walk down a narrow foyer that opens into a megaron, with ample space, a few tall columns, and a fireplace on the far side, in front of which there is a high-backed red velvet chair, facing the cozy flames. The sentimental music is issuing from therein. Long shadows are cast across the room by the fire's light. She sees the yellow bird from the windmill perched on the mantel above the hearth. To either side of the fireplace, there are two monumental tapestries that stretch all the way down to the floor. The one to the left is of a winged unicorn. The one to the right is of an island about to be consumed by a tidal wave. In between them, ominously hovering above the fire, is a third giant tapestry of a knight clad in horrific armor, sitting astride a green bull. A streak of intensified fear shudders through her body, triggering a strong desire to run. However, the music settles back in between her ears, and she feels a calmness wrap around her like a snug blanket. The song becomes a bit melancholy as a lithe figure springs out of the velvet chair and rushes to Penumbra's side. She can see now, by the lambent golden firelight, the impish face of the satyr called Marsyas.
You are gravely wounded, my friend. Come and rest by the fire, and allow my syrinx to ease your suffering in the final moments.
The satyr glances up at she and smiles knowingly.
Well now, you must be she whom Penumbra has spoken of so fondly. The one who swims with the tail of a fish, a supernatural archer, a cloud walker, and chosen wielder of the dragon's heirloom. She who defeated the darkness that calls itself the light, and the liberator of so many trapped souls. Yahoo, the Exalted One, has come to my humble abode.
He bows low and plays a few welcoming notes on his strange flute. Her seahorse toots a little response, being nearly thawed out now.
I am the poet Marsyas. I've heard plenty about you from the birds and the bees, the trees and the breezes. Oh yes, everything knows about you. What a legend.
He begins playing a new ditty, one that is playful and evokes visions in her mind.
Since your tale is so well known, allow me to tell you my story, to judge if you find it worthy. First, you must understand, I don't belong in this dimension. I came from beyond the Silver Stream. In my domain, I was the rascal son of two capricious deities. I caused much mischief and was banished for my misdeeds. I came here and found a new home with a gang of thieves. I convinced my roguish associates to sneak back with me and to steal from the gods. Deities are much more fun to torment than poor, naive mortals. Unfortunately, I was caught in the act by the Prince of Gods and forced to atone for my indiscretions.
I was ordered to play my magic flute in a competition against the prince before the entire divine pantheon. Gods haven't the slightest inkling about mortal emotions, so they did not comprehend the sweet love song I performed. Thus, the prince was awarded victory, and I had to pay his heavy price. I was sentenced to carry out the most heinous of secret missions, to find and murder the 9 muses, daughters of our divine king. The prince was jealous and spiteful. His father, our king, doted on his influential daughters, who inspired mortals to intellectual and creative feats of greatness. The prince, on the other hand, had acquired a reputation for cruelty, tormenting lesser beings into worshipping him out of fear. Stealing the powers of divine enlightenment from his 9 sisters became the prince's obsession. Dark rituals of sacrifice would release their spirits for him to consume and become the ultimate muse for all time. It would be the perfect revenge for his father's favoritism. I was coerced into helping the wicked prince to achieve this goal. I managed to dispose of 8 muses with relative ease. It was the 9th who gave me trouble. I fell deeply in love with her. I allowed her to escape and was about to take my own life out of shame for my bloody crimes when the prince descended upon me. He tied me to a tree branch upside down and had me flayed alive. By the time it was over, all that was left of me was my beating heart, still filled to overflowing with pure love. It turns out, the muse I'd fallen for realized she loved me too. So she came back and found my trembling ticker, buried it in some sacred dirt, and resurrected me with a magic song. The very same one that led your ears here. My terrible deeds were likewise undone by the song, and all 8 of her sisters returned to life. I fled here to avoid the prince's inevitable reprisal, never to see my beloved again, for her place is in the mortal realm. My penance is having to live without her.
Marcius plays a soothing series of notes that lift Penumbra on the air and carry her to the hearth, gently laying her before the fire.
Is there nothing we can do for Penumbra?
She asks woefully.
There is nothing that I can do. But if you learn the song, perhaps you can do something.
Marcius plays a bit slower and motions to her, encouraging her to lift the seahorse to her lips. She does this and blows gently and quietly, absorbing each note into her memory.
Wait a minute.
She thinks out loud.
Your song is tainted. Despite its beauty, the undertone is clear. You are a thief and a murderer. How can I play your song and not relive those dreadful moments you've just shared with me? Love redeems, but does not forget.
Marcius hangs his head in shame.
Yes, I understand your reaction, and you are right to feel that way. I am not a guru. I am a poor teacher. I am a pathetic dancing example of what not to do and of whom not to become. My actions were awful. There is no excuse for what I've done. But at least consider that I was honest in telling you and did not hide my misdeeds from you. The only thing I can do is admit my mistakes, accept responsibility for them, and try to atone for them by generating sounds of beauty that heal, comfort, and bring peace.
She does empathize, despite rejecting his song.
I cannot deny your skill and artistry,
Says she.
but I must sow my own seeds of creativity. Nurture a tree rooted in my original truth, from which to cultivate fruit of my personal experience.
This is your story, after all.
Marcius nods in agreement, then stops for a moment to consider and mumble to himself.
But what if it isn't? Oh my. Could it be? Yes. Yes. It actually makes sense. This isn't her story at all. It can't be. Does she recognize this?
The revelation turns him a bit pale. He can barely contain his anxious feelings. Marcius looks at her and considers what might be true, however unbelievable. He realizes she might already know, in her heart of hearts. She ignores his murmured comment as she begins to sift through the veneer of the satyr's musical tale, which strikes her now as a distortion of some lesser-known Greek fantasy. The ugly truth beneath the surface is far less romantic.
I'm sorry to say, your immortal love may have played you for a fool. She led you into a labyrinth of emotions and tricked you into loving her, for that is what muses do. It was the ideal defense against your deadly intention. She returned and cast a spell to bring you back to life because she knew it would revive her sisters as well. I envision you holding a blood-stained dagger in your quivering hand, but you cannot plunge it into her heart because you've been enchanted. It was the first pure feeling you'd felt throughout the whole grisly ordeal, I'll bet. She showed you, for a brief moment, something that made the suffering of existence bearable. That's what the muses do. They inspire us to cherish life. It's not so special when you really think about it.
Her last remark visibly wounds the sorry satyr.
You see much.
Marcius admits.
She who sleeps beyond the stars must be peering through your eyes. You have great clarity of vision for exhuming buried truth. You arrive as rain and deepest wisdom to spoil my delusion, which pours like golden lyrics from the door in the sky. I know you are searching, so I offer you a bit of my own wisdom in return. Your quest is a self-perpetuating spiral. You are a ship setting sail on seasonal winds of your own desires. Follow them, and you will find what you are searching for. It's probably back wherever you started from in the first place.
For a moment, she is reminded of something. A faint melody now underscored by Marcius's song. It is hidden between the notes. She can almost make it out when poor Penumbra lets out a tragic whimpered sigh. Her attention shifts back to her dying companion. She kneels down and weeps beside her fading friend. She wraps her arms tightly around Penumbra's scruffy neck in a desperate effort to prevent the fox's virtuous spirit from departing.
I thought this melody would lead me to the answer, but perhaps the mouse was wrong. I am aware, yet even my strongest desire cannot alter destiny, nor can any music. I am so sorry, my faithful friend.
She sobs a few silvery tears that drift as fish from her eyes.
You saved me from the dark light.
Penumbra smiles weakly.
Now I am free. to die with honor and dignity. I am glad to have yielded my life to save yours. I have no regrets. It is time that I swim the silver stream. Thank you for your friendship, she. I hope that you will find your true name one day.
Penumbra breathes a final shallow breath and passes into the nether. The fox's body seems to melt into the hearth rug, gradually vanishing from sight and leaving behind only a faint outline. Her silver tears evaporate by way of the fire as she looks up wistfully at the yellow bird perched on the mantel. It gawks back at her blankly. She can hear something rustling about in the embers of the fireplace when Marcius mildly touches her shoulder. This startles her, and she stands up quickly, turning away from the hearth that has become Penumbra's grave.
I am sorry for your loss, but I know now that you cannot remain here.
Marcius says this with a troubled tone. He is guardedly backing away from the blazing fireplace, looking past her and over her head at the tapestry above the mantel.
Although strategically, I do like to know where my enemies are at all times, as it gives me an advantage. I never intended for this to happen.
She turns and sees that the intimidating decoration has begun to ripple, and not because of Marcius's music. The Megaron is silent except for the crackling of the fire.
Finch, I think you might want to move away from the mantle.
Marcius warns the wee, wide-eyed bird, but it just stares at him, unresponsive.
Finch?
The bull in the tapestry snorts, and jets of hot steam vent from its nostrils, scorching the finch's tail feathers. The oblivious ornithoid screeches painfully and flutters away from the fireplace, retreating to some other room in the vast icy palace. The fleeing finch probably has the right idea. She watches a few flaming embers roll out of the fire and onto the hearth. The tapestry is twisting and flapping more violently now, as though it is being coaxed by an invisible hand.
I must tell you something, she.
Marcius tootles his syrinx towards the tapestry of the winged unicorn, and it flutters to life. Bright and majestic, the single-horned daydream gallops out of the magnificent drapery and stamps beside Marcius, as the satyr pulls forth a red rapier from beneath the mythic creature's wing.
I don't think that this is your story. Maybe you've already realized this. I apologize if I am insulting your intelligence, but you must know, no matter how lucid and thereby aware you become, nothing can happen here without the dreamer's permission. Everything that has transpired only occurred because the dreamer willed it. You have no control. That would suggest you are not real, but rather a whim of the dreamer's imagination.
She raises a skeptical eyebrow. How can this possibly be so?
I can't be certain, but why else could you not save Penumbra? Maybe the dreamer wanted our fox friend to die. Perhaps it was devised so that you would experience loss while also jerking a tear. Your silver sorrow attracts the demon. Penumbra's death summons the bull.
She remains dubious, despite the evidence the satyr is offering.
What I am finding the most puzzling, though, is you appear to believe wholeheartedly that you are a living being on the other side of this narrative, stuck dreaming until your quest is completed. When I discovered that I was fictitious, it felt like I'd always known, deep down. It wasn't a surprise at all. Why, I wonder, Won't you accept it?
Because what you're saying is madness.
She answers.
My harsh honesty and my refusal to learn your song broke your brain.
You will find your own song. I saw your ears perk up, like you were starting to hear it, hidden behind my own melancholy music. Inspiration is important, though sometimes it muddies the waters of creative reflection. The next time it comes, I promise that I won't be there to distract you from it.
Marcius assures her. The satyr mounts his flying unicorn, brandishing his blade. His old tainted dagger was discarded long ago, lost in favor of an elegant and much more honorable implement. Marcius drops his flute to the cold ground. The grim foes depicted before them are nearly materialized. None will survive the catastrophe they represent.
You must sail to the glacial grave.
Marcius instructs.
It is an island long forgotten. There is one residing there who forgot to die. You may take your boat that is docked below in the catacombs. It is called the Pisces. It will know where you desire to go, and will take you there swiftly.
Green bolts are crawling all around them now.
I have a boat?
She inquires, but Marcius is too preoccupied to respond. Either that, or he is purposefully ignoring her. The satyr smiles.
There are those who cannot be reasoned with. We must be willing to fight these abominations to protect what we hold most dear. I've put down my flute for the last time. Now go. Take the stairs hidden behind the tapestry to the right of the fireplace. Do not look back.
With that, the bull and its armor-clad rider leap into the room. Their violent arrival causes the palace to quake and icicles to fall from the ceiling. She darts towards the tapestry of the island enshadowed by a wave. She hopes that this does not portend her future. She pushes it aside, splashing frigid water as the fabric substantiates. She descends a spiral staircase concealed behind it. The stairs are dark and frozen, but her boots, that once allowed her to walk upon clouds, now seem rather adept at gripping ice. She navigates a series of small interlocking passages until finding the catacombs. The crypt houses many ornate sarcophagi, set within sepulchres dug out of the icy walls. Each casket has been carved in effigy of some noble-looking creature. On the far side of the room is another staircase, which curves down to a wooden dock overlooking a freezing, subterranean river that is languidly flowing between the roots of the castle. There, tied to the dock, is a boat, branded on each side with 2 fish swimming in opposite directions. She can only assume that this is her vessel. She likes the color. The seahorse has been hopping ahead and leaps into the boat. In the center of the craft's bow is a glowing dream star. It shines like a lantern to light the way before the vessel. She steps into the boat and can hear the sounds of battle above. The pillars of the catacombs rattle, and hunks of icy debris drop from overhead into the frigid river, conveniently breaking apart any icy obstructions and clearing a pathway for her to make her escape. She sees no oars with which to row the boat. Then she realizes it has begun drifting on its own.
All you need to do is think of where you would like to go and the Pisces will take you there.
She hears a tiny voice say. She looks to the front of the canoe and spots the little yellow finch perched there, brushing at its tail feathers, which have been scorched by the steam from the bull's nostrils.
I hope you don't mind if I tag along. I was left behind when my family migrated for the winter. I had a broken wing and could not fly, but I am all mended now, thanks to Marcius.
The finch rubs its brow.
He has done his fair share of bad deeds, but he has tried his best to atone for them. Strange, I have a bit of a headache, and I cannot remember why I came down here.
The finch then notices a persistent flame on its posterior plumage that won't be snuffed.
What's become of my poor tail?
The finch's loss of memory and subsequent headache sounds familiar. She begins looking around for lizard footprints. She knows that the gecko-melian called Hellbender must be nearby. The Pisces navigates the subterranean river swiftly.
You don't have things to eat, do you?
The finch asks.
The last time I ate, crickets were chirping.
All the while, a battle rages on in the castle above. Marcius soars around the room on his mythic steed, diving low and swiping at the Green Knight with his rapier, but the Phantom's armor is seemingly impenetrable. The knight wields a hefty flail, swinging it in wide arcs, trying to smash the nimble Marcius and his volatant unicorn to smithereens. The bull savagely charges across the Megaron to gore the walls with its colossal horns and bring the place crumbling down.
Mortals used to worship me, you know.
Marcius shouts at the Green Knight, knowing full well nothing he says will matter to this juggernaut, whose only concern is to squash him.
Then I realized that I am nothing. I'm not the least bit real. I am only a figment. Ever since that revelation, I've just been waiting for a purpose. Waiting for you. I've longed for this day.
The satyr pulls out a magical flask and guzzles down its mysterious, sappy contents.
We drink to remember. We drink to forget. I do so cherish sweet Nixerva.
The elixir in the bottle gives Marcius a boost of fatal courage. He circles around for one final reckless attack. The Green Knight dangles its menacingly spiked weapon, awaiting the killing stroke. The bull snorts and stomps its heavy hooves into the floor, scraping away ice and stone and leaving deep ruts. Marcius howls a strident battle cry and initiates his descent. His steed dives with the speed of a falling star. They race towards their conclusions. At this precise moment, as though time slows down just long enough for a lizard to sleekly insert himself into the fight, Hellbender, the gecko-melian, comes rolling out of the fireplace, bringing a few bright embers with him. He becomes visible and shifts shape into a bipedal humanoid reptilian, replete with battle regalia and a flaming dagger. He leaps up onto the bull's backside and stabs down hard, impaling its right haunch. The agile reptile then flips backward, landing on the fireplace mantle. It all happens so fast that the Green Knight can barely turn to look at Hellbender before Marcius attacks. The shrewd satyr drives his rapier directly through the eye slot of the knight's helmet. The injured bull rears back and rampages all over the Megaron, rending the frozen pillars asunder. Marcius tugs at the unicorn's mane, a signal that translates to halt and hover. He gazes down upon Hellbender, cracks a smile, and calls to his old acquaintance.
I was wondering when you might come looking for me. I appreciate the distraction you created. It is good to know that we can still work together, despite our previous disagreements.
The Rainbow Ward, protecting the castle, fractures. Hellbender glares back at Marcius with judgmental, glowing eyes.
It sounds like your colorful concealment spell has been broken. No matter. I journeyed here to make certain that the prophecy of Zorn was fulfilled.
She has awoken then. Now, it is simply a matter of time. I cannot follow her path any longer, for I will perish in winter. I barely made it to your fireplace before my cold blood began to congeal. This hearth is an altar, an island, and a tomb, beside which I am to remain stranded forever.
Marcius teases his old partner in crime.
So, we shall die side by side, even after all these years of mutual begrudgery.
The satyr twirls his rapier about blithely.
Let it never again be said, there is no honor among thieves. With all that we've been through together, it seems fitting. If only Tumbles were here to share in it with us.
I saw him,
says Hellbender.
though he did not see me. But then again, maybe he did, and he just didn't say anything. That gnome is a perplexing character. He was clad as a clown, much like his father, the obnoxious jester Hippus Quickfoot was before him.
Hellbender jumps down from the mantle and stands under Marcius.
But at least one of us may yet survive to tell all of our fabulous tales.
Did you really come so far just to die with me?
Marcius asks.
No, I came to fulfill the prophecy, but also to deliver a message from your undying beloved.
Marcius is stunned.
I was asked to tell you that all love is real, and what you shared was true. You are never alone, for love shall endure.
Hellbender relays. Marcius smiles bittersweetly. The rogues exchange nods, circle about, and converge towards the berserk bull. The Green Knight is turning ethereal, transforming into a sylph. Its ghastly armor and spiked flail drop with a loud clank to the floor, shattering into emerald bits. The bull charges at Hellbender as Marcius directs his steed to attack. There is the dramatic impact of their final meeting, and then it ends when it all comes crashing down on top of them. The Pisces has taken her out to sea with great haste. She looks back in the distance to see the frozen palace collapsing and a green mist rising from the rubble. She feels as though she has no tears left to cry. So many have suffered and died to help her. When will it end? An icy rain begins to fall, taking the place of doleful drops she can no longer summon. The deepest wisdom, born of experience, has made death all too familiar. She wonders if she is becoming numb to it. She turns her back on the destruction, leaving it behind her, and focuses on that which now lies ahead, a vast Arctic ocean and the endless night sky. Even with Speartooth, her seahorse, and the flame-tailed finch to keep her company, she has never felt so alone as she does right now. What Marcius said is haunting her mind. She tries to ignore it, but she just can't let it go. How could she not be real? plot thickens. Did you know that female reindeer have antlers? They are the only species of cervid that do. And what's more, the females keep their antlers during the winter months, while the males shed theirs. The shamanic symbol of the mother of deer is often depicted with her antlers caressing the rising sun, like a mother's womb clutches her soon-to-be-born child. She is a pagan icon of survival and regeneration, a widespread seasonal allegory that finds its basis in the reality of nature. But what is real, anyway? Is something only real if it's tangible? Is a thought real? It exists, and it affects our perception of what we believe to be reality. So then, why is an idea any less real than a physical thing? Who is to say that any of us are truly real either? Life is but a dream, as the nursery rhyme goes, right? This philosophical conundrum may seem like childish semantics, but in fact, it is the unanswerable existential question that is the beating heart at the very center of our existence. Until our next encounter, I wish you peace, love, and thunderstorms. Farewell, dreamers.